Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining today's Doing Business in the U.S. webinar, a guide to Canadian business expansion to the U.S. My name is Sarah Larson, Marketing Manager here at Invest Buffalo Niagara, the Buffalo Niagara region's economic development organization. Invest Buffalo Niagara works daily to assist companies interested in expanding their business to Buffalo Niagara. And today, we will explain how we can help you too. The great thing about this live format is that we will hold a Q&A at the end of our presentation. This is your chance to pick Olivia's brain and ask Christoph about his expansion experience. On that note, joining me today are two presenters. From NBN's business development team is Olivia Hill. Olivia works closely with Canadian companies who are considering an expansion to the US. She assists companies free of charge every step of the way. Olivia and I are thrilled to welcome our guest presenter today. Christoph Schmitz. Christoph is the founder and CEO of Patco Medical, a medical device company who recently expanded to Buffalo from Canada and worked with Olivia to do so. So now that you know who we are, we'd like to pause briefly to get to know our audience with three quick polls. First, are you currently selling or shipping products in the US? If you can select one, whether you are not or you are, what percentage of your sales are US? 70% said no, they're not. And so you must be in early stages of thinking about this. But we do have 30% who are selling into the US, and several of them are at least 30 or more percent selling into the US. And so this is something that you should be considering, whether this is a time for you to expand or not. Are you considering a business expansion to the US yet? If so, when? If you are, is it something within the next year, which is very possible you'll learn today? Or are you thinking it's further than a year out? That's okay too. It's never too early to connect. So our largest percent are thinking that they would like to expand and pretty quickly. I think you'll be pleased with what you hear today. What is your biggest concern with structuring operations in the US? Is it cost, time, just a lack of knowledge, or is it fear of the unknown? So for most of you, it's the lack of knowledge, and you've come to the right place for sure, or the unknown, and of course, cost. I'm going to hide these results and get back to our presentation. And at this time, without further ado, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Olivia.
Thanks so much, Sarah. As she mentioned earlier, I am part of the business development team here at Invest Buffalo Niagara. I spend the majority of my time working with Canadian companies that are looking to expand to the US. There are various reasons for a US expansion for a Canadian business, but a key one is access to the US market. So you'll see on this map that you can see the areas of the US that can be reached within a 10-hour drive of the Buffalo Niagara region. Our strategic location on the Canadian border is within 500 miles or 800 kilometers of the binational population. Other reasons for Canadian companies to expand to the US include things like made in the US label, potentially lowering costs of doing business and mitigating cross-border delays and costs, reduced risk to the Canadian headquarters, and I'll mention, because of the nature of today's economy, proximity to customers and proximity to raw materials as a really important factor that a lot of Canadian businesses are thinking about when they're thinking US expansion. So why Buffalo Niagara? Well, our proximity to the Canadian border is obviously a major benefit to the region. Canadian companies can access both their Canadian and US facilities within a short drive. We also have access to low cost and reliable hydropower, a skilled and affordable workforce, and a low cost of living that are all major selling points to starting a business here. We help companies in a variety of industries, and each has a compelling reason, or more than just one compelling reason, to expand here. So for manufacturers, it may be the 0% New York State corporate income tax rate. For our food processors, it may be access to dairy or the cluster of dairy production companies in our region. For life sciences, it may be the 120-acre medical campus that's growing by the day. And for our tech companies, it may be joining an already growing hub of tech companies that are making the downtown core of Buffalo their home. So how do we help? So we've talked about our location right on the border, and sometimes because we are so close to Canada, it's easy to forget that we're different countries, right? So part of what we spend our time on with Canadian companies is helping them understand how to expand an international business. So that includes things like the legal side, the accounting side, HR considerations, and more. So we'll walk you through what we call the cross-border due diligence, helping you understand how to do a cross-border expansion, all of the ins and outs of how to build your business properly on this side of the border. A major component of an expansion is your workforce. And with the US's low unemployment rate and the war for talent, this has never been more important to your operation than finding the right people. And it can be a little bit tricky. So we'll help by getting you connected to hiring resources and training pipelines that will help you find the right candidate for your position. And our organization is helping to lead the way through our initiative called Be in Buffalo. This is a talent attraction initiative housed right in our organization with the goal of bringing expats back to our region and connecting college graduates here from one of our 21 colleges and universities to job opportunities right here in Buffalo, Niagara. We also help with site selection. So we offer this assistance for expanding companies through our site broadcast protocol. Our team has strong relationships to the commercial real estate community, and we can use your specific building criteria to find the right space for you. We also get companies connected to utility partners to help understand if that site is suitable for your needs, if it has the right power, if it has the right gas to the site, but also understanding if you can get that building where you need it to be in terms of those specs. So incentives play a large role in expansion as well. So we can help you determine if your company qualifies for various incentives opportunities and connect you to those opportunities. Various organizations offer different incentives, so our job is really to help you understand what those different incentives are, let you know how that will impact your bottom line here. Here I've listed a couple of the Canadian companies that we've helped, and I say a couple because in the 20 years that we've been in existence, we've helped over 100 Canadian companies expand here. You might recognize a couple of these names, including Patco Medical, and Christoph is here to join us to tell us about his expansion experience and working with us to do so.
Yes, hi. Thank you so much for having me. Let me start off by saying I'm excited to be part of this webinar and kind of share my experience a little bit. You know, when asked to be part of webinars, if it is from someone where you've just benefited from so much as I have, working with Invest Buffalo, it's something that is a no-brainer. So very happy to be here. Thank you so much. My name is Christoph Schmitz. I'm the founder and CEO of Patco Medical, established in 2018, first as a Canadian business, and it is still a Canadian business. But then since last year, July, we have our US subsidiary. Briefly about what do we do? We are a medical device company focusing on swallowing diagnostic equipment. So if you, for example, have a stroke patient that has difficulty swallowing, they have what's called dysphagia. And then what our customers, who are predominantly speech language pathologists, do is they use endoscopy equipment to go into the back of the throat of the patient, give them different consistencies to eat, and then evaluate what is safe or not safe to eat for them. In simple terms, we have a bit of a niche with portable equipment, and we are in a field with very large companies that are our competitors. So it's a pretty big pond with a lot of sharks. but yeah, we're a small company doing good things and seeing very consistent and nice growth. So why did we expand to the US? So as I said, company was established in 2018, and then 2019 really was our first year in business. And quickly it became clear that the US is the largest market for us. Really not a surprise. 40% of all medical devices in the world are sold in the United States. So that wasn't a surprise, and we did that from Canada, right? From Canada selling into the United States, which is not all that difficult. You feel like as you're doing it. And then though we had, 80% of our sales in the US, and then you start thinking, does it make sense to have a US entity and be just a little bit closer to your customers? The wheels start spinning and thinking about all of that. One thing I can tell you is that our main competitors are all based in the US or have subsidiaries in the United States. And on a day-to-day business, we did hear questions from customers. Oh, you're a Canadian company. Is that going to be difficult with customer service or, lead times or anything like that? And it's, I guess a valid concern and something that a competitor would maybe sometimes try to use as their advantage and say like, oh, this company, Patco Medical, is not a US based company. Yeah, that is one other reason why we thought, okay, going into the US and having an entity there might make sense. Then the ability to benefit from government programs such as Startup New York, which we are now part of. That is for the most part for US-based businesses and played a role as well. And then the ease of doing business, right? So again, going to working with customers, for example, when a customer wants to purchase equipment from us, they need a tax form, right, called a W-9 in the United States. Now there is a W-8, 8BENE, and you can already tell by the name, it is just a little bit more complicated than the W-9. And they would always ask for the W-9, and then we would always have to explain, well, we don't have a W-9, but we do have a W-8, and so on and so forth, and it kind of replaces it, and it works in the same way. But yeah, it is easier as a US-based company to just work with your customers, and that was an important reason as well. How do you decide where you go? If you are looking to expand in the United States, like I was, over a year ago, you probably are thinking, well, maybe Delaware is a good location because that's sort of the state where everyone knows, well, it's good for companies because there's no state tax. And, that's something that I was thinking about as well. And then naturally, we're based, the parent headquarters are based in Toronto. So naturally, you're looking at the closest proximity to where you are, which is the Buffalo Niagara region. So proximity to GTA, I'm sure everyone knows, Greater Toronto area. That was pretty important. And I can tell you now that, yes, I can, being based in Toronto, I can drive to Buffalo in an hour and 10 minutes. And if I need to, I can do that every day. Right, so that is a huge advantage. And then Buffalo is a great hub for technology and life sciences. Olivia was mentioning it earlier, very large medical facilities. There is other companies in the technology space doing great things, and clinical leaders as well that in our particular case in life sciences and medical devices are definitely good to be around. The fact that Buffalo has an airport close to the city center is a little detail that I think is really nice to have. For example, if you have employees that you want to send to travel, the simple fact that they can get to the airport without maybe driving hour and a half or something like that, then leaving their car at the airport and all of that is really an advantage as well. And yeah, ultimately those were the points why we decided to go to the Buffalo Niagara region. And now talking about the expansion process, and I want to say that part of the decision making, are we going with Buffalo Niagara, was really working with Invest Buffalo Niagara, because like I mentioned before, ease of doing business, I really believe that's very important if you're running a small business. Some of you are probably in the same position, right? Getting something done efficiently and fast has great value in a small business environment. And yeah, that was ultimately one factor as well why we said yes, this is the right region for us. So the process was surprisingly easy, right? So when you start thinking about, oh, okay, entity, what does that mean? I'm going to have to deal with the IRS, and I'm going to have to deal with new laws, and I have to do, all these other things. And so in my case, I got connected with Olivia here from Invest Buffalo Niagara, and we had an initial conversation sometime in February of 2021, and through that conversation, and really that was the starting point of the journey into becoming and establishing an entity in the United States. It was so easy. I'll say that now, right? It was really very simple. A lot of things are very similar to Canada. Establishing a business is almost as easy as it is in Canada. The kind of documentation that you need, like corporate documentation, for example, very similar. And the way that taxes are done and everything, actually very similar, because and I learned that in the process. For example, as a Canadian company, you sell to the United States, maybe you're not charging sales tax. It's very similar as a New York entity. You will charge sales tax in the state of New York, but to any other state, you're still sort of a foreign entity from another state. So things are very similar in a lot of ways. And what was really good was, from the get-go, Olivia then laid out, what are the next steps? What do we need to do? Who do we need to talk to? We need to talk to accountants. We need to talk to lawyers. We need to talk to, and so on and so forth. Then the question is like, do you have someone, or do you want us to provide someone? And it's really like, there's no pressure. It's like, oh, you have to talk to this, that, and the other. So in our case, for example, we're working with a bank that was suggested, but maybe not with a law firm. So very flexible, no pressure, and just like a nice pathway. How are we going to get where we need to be? The fact that it is free of charge is, of course, amazing as well. Again, if you're a small business, you can decide, okay, we're going to take a lot of money and give it to someone to do it all for us. But if you want to do it yourself, then working with the team here is really incredible. And then I can tell you that it really only took 9 months. I mean, we talked in February roughly, and then we established a business July 1st, 2021, and that was our goal when I started. So we had about 5-6 months, and that was enough to get it going. And then it only took another 2-3 months to be part of Startup New York, to be in an incubator. We're now at an incubator at University at Buffalo, and benefiting from being in that environment and working closely with a university partner. It was a quick journey, but very successful, and we're very happy to move on. Yeah. So what's our progress since the expansion? We are looking at double-digit growth, which we're coming out of this pandemic, and there's a war in Europe, and we're dealing with a lot of things that you all know have an impact, like on our suppliers, on cost, shipping cost, fuel, all of that. And being able to have that growth is incredible. We're very happy about it. The fact that we are able to keep a lean organization really helps us a lot. And working with the team here, working with Invest Buffalo Niagara, allows you to do that. Stay lean, do it efficiently, and benefit from all that they have to offer here. We are now, I mentioned it already, we're collaborating with the University of Buffalo. We actually moved in with them in a beautiful space that is quite affordable, has a lot of meeting space. We have a large meeting room where we can fit, I don't know, 50-60 people probably. We have a number of small meeting rooms. We have shared kitchen, everything. There's a lot of startup companies that you meet like on the floors and connect with, and maybe one can help with the other. And there is a lot of people that or I got connected with that are very open to working together, helping you, whether that is staff at the university or other companies. So it's been a terrific experience. We are now in the second semester already working with the computer sciences master class. You're looking at programmers that already have bachelor degrees, have already worked in the industry, and now are doing a master's program. And they do projects with you, and we have 5-6 people working on a project for us at a time. It's fantastic, really, really good. We have started to collaborate with clinical leaders, in our field, very important locally. So that has been really good. And we, started hiring people. We have our first full-time employee in the office, our office manager. We have a field representative already, not based in the region, but yeah, we're working on expanding on that side as well. So it's been a great journey, good growth, very happy with the decision to actually go that route and creating that entity in the United States. And yeah, couldn't ask for a better outcome so far.
So I think at this time we'll have Olivia join us as well. Olivia, any thoughts initially based on Christoph's presentation?
Well, I love so much of what Christoph talked about, and not just because part of it was, praise for me and our organization, but I think he touched on a couple things that I'd like to dig in a little deeper. He mentioned that those introductions that we made to regional partners and who he was able to use and not use. So our expertise really relies heavily on our regional partners who are experts in cross-border business. So our role is really to get companies like Christoph's connected to them, and every company needs something different. So Christoph mentioned a couple things. They're working with one of our banking partners. They are working with the Startup New York program, which is one of the incentives programs, and we can dive into that a little bit more. But I think what we really want to take from this is that no project is the same, and what you need is a little bit different. So our job is to walk you through it, to evaluate what you need and make recommendations. And we try to be as flexible as possible, because what Christoph needs as a life sciences company may be different than a food processing company and what they're looking for here. So something to keep in mind. But Christoph, I'd like you to, if you don't mind, dive into a little bit that Startup New York program that you mentioned. Can you tell us a little bit about that process so I can give a little background? That's a New York State program. It's connected to the University of Buffalo, which is who Christoph mentioned he's working with. And it allows Christoph and his organization to operate tax-free because they are located in the tax-free zone, which is with the university. And they're required to, because of this collaboration, to work with the university. So can you talk a little bit about what a selling point that program was for you and how easy or the process in which getting up and running with the university was?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can tell you when, it was actually after we had established the Canadian business for some time, and then I was talking to a friend who's also running a business actually in Canada, and they told me, oh, we're with the university and this and that. I was like, oh yeah, that's great. I wish I would have done something like that. So when looking at expanding into the United States, I knew I wanted that. I wanted some kind of a collaboration with the university institution, whatnot, to work together and benefit in that way. Startup New York is a fantastic program. The tax advantage, right? That's basically making New York as beneficial as Delaware, because no state income tax. I mean, that of course is a huge incentive, and that's for 10 years. And I mean that's a perspective for small growing business that is yeah, really great. And then Olivia, you had connected me with Karen, who was absolutely phenomenal to work with, and kind of similar to you, took me by the hand. It's like, okay, so this is the process, this is what it's all about and what we need to do. And there's a little bit of a commitment, right, where you say, okay, we partner with the university, for example, or college, or whoever is part of this whole Startup New York world. And there's an expectation that you really want to partner. You want to take interns. You want to work with masterclass students, for example. You want to hire people. Maybe try to hire alumni. And so there's a little bit of that commitment, which naturally I was very happy to do and to give, because that is what we want to do. We want to grow the business and the presence in the States. Again, everything was made pretty easy and explained really well. The whole process of applying for that and choosing a right partner. We had maybe 2-3 meetings with some key people to figure out which partner, what we can do, what we want to do, and how to have a good application to be chosen for a program like that.
This collaboration with UB was a perfect fit for Christoph, and this incentive fit very nicely. Olivia, I wanted to just ask you to speak a little bit about a couple other collaborations that you've helped companies with, particularly like manufacturing, like Northland's Workforce Training Center, Buffalo Manufacturing Works, or even, the M&T Tech Academy. There's really something for every industry.
Yeah, that's a great point, Sarah. Christoph really benefited from this Startup New York and university collaboration, but it's not just that university that you have to collaborate with. I mentioned we have 21 colleges and universities, which just gives you a taste of how many organizations and other things are happening that you can get involved with. For startup companies, it might be getting involved with 43 North and the entrepreneurial ecosystem here, whether it's through 43 North or Launch New York, which is an incubator here in Western New York. Sarah mentioned Northland Workforce Training Center. This is our new training facility here, working on getting people prepared for work in the trades. We all know that, over the years, we're seeing a dwindling amount of people going into trades, but we know those can be really good jobs and that we need them. As a region that's always had a strong manufacturing presence, we still need really skilled workers. So Northland is working on that. We work every day to get companies connected there. And I will say too, collaboration within our own organization. I referenced Be in Buffalo, which is our talent attraction initiative, born out of this talent wars that we're seeing, right? It's hard to find people, so that's part of it. Another thing that we're doing is called economic gardening, which is to help companies grow from within, so companies that are here. So we're trying to make this as well-rounded as possible for companies so that when they get here, so we get Christoph here, right? We help him through the process, but it does us no good if he doesn't have the collaboration, the connections, and resources to be successful. My work with Christoph is not done. So if Christoph ever needed anything, he knows he can pick up the phone and say, hey, Olivia, I'm struggling to do this. Who should I talk to? And that's really what we hope our companies find with us is we're your first call and hopefully getting you connected to the right people.
Well, I do have additional questions coming in from our attendees. The first one, okay, so Christoph, where do you actually manufacture your devices? Is it still in Canada? Is it here in the US? And how does that work?
Yeah, it's actually a combination of many places, partially in Canada, partially in the United States, and partially in Europe. Now, we as an organization are actually not a manufacturer. We work with contract manufacturers in those places that have where we have private label relationships with. These suppliers are mostly in Europe, United States, and in Canada.
Yeah, and so Olivia, maybe you can follow up on that just for a minute, because it's different for every company. We've seen very similar cases like Christoph expand here, but then we've also seen companies expand portions of their manufacturing here so that they can take part in that Made in the USA label. Or sometimes they start here and don't bring the manufacturing over and then do, years later.
It really can run the gamut. So we work with companies like Christoph's a lot who are really the head office, the sales, the marketing, all the nuts and bolts, but they have someone else manufacturing the product, specifically in the life sciences, and I'm sure Christoph could talk to this more, just the amount of regulation and compliancy things that go into a life sciences product, as opposed to a different kind of manufacturing process. We do see companies who have their whole manufacturing facility here in the US. I mentioned earlier that 0% state corporate income tax for companies that are manufacturing here. So there is a good reason to manufacture here if it makes sense for your business. And then sometimes it's just not part of the business model. So we work with, I mentioned those back office and tech companies where they're not producing a physical product. And I think so much of our economy is moving towards something like that, right? Where you maybe don't see the physical product, but there are people doing back-end work on maybe an app or software as a service. So it really ranges for companies that we work with.
A couple of the questions here are pretty similar, and I think Christoph answered them to a point, but maybe you want to expand. One of them is if you've seen increase of sales volume since being here. And the other way someone worded it was how was being in the US impacted your ability to gain US customers?
Right, so it makes it easier for our customers to purchase from us. So, in our world, for example, we're selling capital equipment to hospitals. A hospital needs to list you as a vendor before they can purchase from you. The standard process, includes a W-9 form, includes, like banking information, maybe some other things. For example, an IT questionnaire where they're asking, are there any people from outside the country accessing this environment, things like that. And if you can just check off everywhere, US based, W-9, US bank account and all of that, it just makes it a little bit easier for your customers to purchase from you. Things are faster, for sure, no question about it. If the approval process is the same as always, then it takes 2 weeks. If it's foreign business, how does it work? Extra approval stage, it might take 4 or 5 weeks longer or something like that. So that really helps.
Another one for Christoph. Were there any surprises, or what surprised you most during the expansion process or move to Buffalo?
Yeah, I mean, very surprised how easy it was, really. Truthfully, we've done everything virtually. In fact, the three of us have never met in person yet, unfortunately, which we really need to do. But I think the fact that it could all be done virtually, we established a business without ever being there in person, and communication was easy, and the whole process was easy from A to Z. So that was a big surprise, because starting a business and expanding into another country seems like such a big thing, but it really doesn't have to be.
You mentioned some of the similarities. What was one or two of the biggest differences between doing business in Canada and the US?
Very specific things, how taxes is done a little bit differently. So one of the things that we did, and I'm glad that we did, is to work with a local accounting firm. You can work with Canadian accounting firms. A lot of Canadian accountants are also US accountants, and that's one way we decided to work locally. And I feel like that really helped, because the tax system in the United States is quite complicated, and if you're like us, where you sell into basically every state, yeah, it can get complicated. So that's a little bit different. That's a little bit easier in Canada, in my opinion. But if you're already selling into the United States, then again, it's easier to be there and then connected with local accountants and whatnot to help you with that.
And I'll jump on that, Sarah, too. What we see a lot is we're so similar to Canadians. We think culturally we're very similar, but human resources, HR, and workforce is very different. And that's one of the biggest things we encourage our companies to be thinking about from the beginning, is how are you going to make your corporate cultures feel like the same, even though hiring and the HR practices in the US and Canada are going to be different. Things like PTO, paid family leave, medical insurance, all different in the US and Canada. Not scary, just different. And so that's another one where we feel so similar, but it's something to keep in mind when you're expanding your business. And things that, as the CEO and founder of a medical device company, Christoph probably hadn't touched before he got in touch with us. So we try to keep people aware of not just the similarities, but the differences.
So Christoph mentioned that we haven't even met in person yet, which there's some options there, whether you want to work virtually, you want to work in person with your meetings, or a hybrid of it. As well as, can you just talk about at what point should a company reach out to start the conversation with you, and what should they do to prepare for that conversation?
We really work in whatever format works for companies. Before the pandemic, we did everything in person. And I will say, even though we are so close to Canada and that trip over the border typically doesn't take a lot of time, when you are in the weeds in your business doing day-to-day activities, not having to travel over here for those meetings, I assume, and I wonder if Christoph would agree to this, is a real benefit, that you don't have to add in that travel time to learn all this information. With Christoph, we did a half day of Zoom meetings. So it was probably 4 hours. It was all right in a row. It was a lot of information, but I think really beneficial to have it all at once, and then be able to sit at his computer and kind of break down what he had learned and dig into what other questions he might have. So, we can work virtually. Of course, I'm in my office right now, happy to meet with people and see their pupils in person too. So happy to be in person. We didn't do site selection with Christoph. That's one of the ways we can really help is coordinating site searches and helping you visit those sites as well. So we can do that in person too. So we really can work with however works for your company. And I've been talking so long, I kind of forgot your second question, Sarah. So
It's
hit me with
okay,
it.
I can help answer too, because really there's no, right or wrong time to start the conversation with you. Earlier the better, even if you're even thinking about it, because you'll let them know what needs to be done before you can start, helping them further. So there's really no good point. And what to have prepared, you don't really have to have anything prepared. Starting that initial conversation with you really will get them prepared. But we do have some documents that could help.
Yeah, and that's what I would know is we have a short form. It helps you to start penciling in some numbers around what your potential project might look like. And I think that helps not just me understand your project scope and who you might need to be connected with or what resources you'll need, but also for you, the company, to really start to think about what you want your US facility to look like, what you think you're going to end up spending. And I will say, I know the Canadian real estate market is crazy and it's a little bit crazy here too. So I'd say the sooner you get in touch with us, the better. Our services are free. So it doesn't hurt if you call us early, and we'll keep in touch with you throughout the process. But Christoph called us at the perfect time and it worked so smoothly. And I wish all of my projects were open and shut in 9 months, but we can work as fast or as slow as a company needs, and happy to always share information at no matter what stage a company's at.
So I have one more question here from our audience. They're wondering about the 10-year no tax for service-based companies as well.
So you don't have to manufacture anything to be part of the Startup New York program, but there are some other qualifications, and we'd want to talk to you about that to see if you qualify. There are some requirements in terms of industry and what you might be working on, and making sure you're not competing with another company that would be doing the same services in the Startup New York program already. But what I will mention too, and Christoph has just hired his first office manager, so interesting perspective I think you'd probably have on this. Part of the Startup New York program benefits is offering a no income tax to your employees as well. And so Christoph, when you were hiring your first employee in the US, how was that part of your conversation when it came to recruiting in what is a very tight labor market?
Right. So, when you're a small company, you will not have all the same benefits as a big company, right? You might not offer insurance yet. You might not have a 401k yet, and all these kind of things. So, having that as a perk, as a benefit, I think is really nice to have, and certainly something that that candidates were very happy about, and that's kind of how I used it, right? It's like, because it's like, oh, are there any benefits? Yeah, there's a benefit. You're not paying state income tax, so that's pretty good.
So that's all I have from our attendees. Any closing remarks, Olivia or Christoph?
Okay, I'll go first. I mean, I'm repeating myself, but if you are, small business or big business, and you just think, well, I would like to be in the US, but it just seems so big and so complicated and whatever it is, really do reach out, and just start that conversation. And you almost get like a little like individual handbook how to do it. And so like I said, I'm very happy that we did that, and it really helped our business quite a bit.
Yeah, I just second what Christoph said. I'm obviously very biased and think this region is a great location for Canadian companies to locate, but it just never hurts to start asking those questions, especially if you have US customers or you think you want to have US customers. We are the next most logical location for so many Canadians because of our proximity. So let's chat about if it makes sense for your business.
We'll mention one more time that Olivia's services are free of charge to any company considering an expansion to the US. So I want to, before we leave, just thank everyone for joining us. We appreciate you being part of this presentation, and especially thank you, Olivia and Christoph, for joining me today and for the wonderful presentation.